I don't want people to think like they're just employees, they're owners. And if you can get every single leader to feel that they own a piece of this company, now what kind of mindset would people be walking around with if they really have that level? Like, this is my company. I own a piece of this, and this is how I'm going to show up every single day.
The only constant is change. And for us who live it, the pace of change is relentless. It's really impossible to keep up, and we're in it every single day. Hi everyone, my name is Christine Duque. I am the CEO of Alonsera. We are a new wave consultancy built for companies ready to turn data and AI into real results. We combine the discipline of traditional consulting with hands-on AI engineering and product expertise to help businesses move faster and smarter, achieving higher ROI. So as we are deep in the AI space, I am so excited to really announce this new focus of Alonsera around a great partnership with the Code Collective. Joining me is Christy Anderson from the Code Collective.
Thank you for having me. It's so exciting to be here.
I am so excited that you're here and just really excited about the partnership between Alonsera and the Code Collective, especially in this transformative age of AI. You and I are both in the forefront of AI, and as people really are probably wondering, what is the big deal? First of all, it's like $1.87 trillion global opportunity by 2030. And that is a big deal. I always joke around and say, $1.87 trillion is what all of us in the tech world are running after as a global number. And to solve for world hunger is $25 billion. We're choosing AI. But what's even crazier, what's so important and what's so explosive about AI is that this is the fastest innovation that we've ever seen in the history of humanity.
Yeah.
And I really truly mean that, right? When you're talking about the adoption of innovation in the history of humanity, meaning 90% of the total human population, let's just talk about technology. Refrigerator. It took 47 years for the human population at 90% to adopt to the refrigerator.
Right.
It seems really crazy. And then let's talk about the internet. It took about 23 years for us to adopt to the internet. And when you start to add smartphones and mobile applications, it's around 12 years. AI is projected to be 3 to 4 years in terms of adoption. So we are at the very, very beginning of this journey with AI. And what's really kind of funny about it, I talk about AI as like teenage talk, is that everyone says they're doing it. Everyone says they know about doing it. So just assume that everyone's doing it. But the reality is we are at the infancy of AI. But it's been around for a while, right? People don't think that automation is AI, as it's just not the sexy part of artificial intelligence as people would really think about it. But when you think about digital transformation and innovation, and most certainly when you're thinking about AI innovation and this speed that we're talking about in adoption, the problem is not the technology. You and I are just one of the few people in the world who can actually raise their hand and say that we've successfully implemented AI. Most certainly in my career, I'm one of the few people who can actually claim to be part of that 10% that has implemented AI successfully for enterprise organizations. It's 30% data and technology as a problem, 70% all about people, because this is about change. And what people don't like to do is change. So the partnership with the Code Collective with Alonsera excites me so much because it takes your experience in innovation and transformation and to life to really, how do you think about not just a successful implementation of AI as, technology things about, but the actual deployment of AI to an organization. I think that's the key. It's the deployment of AI. So, Christy, talk us about the Code Collective. Why did you find a Code Collective, and what is the Code Collective?
Thanks so much. So the Code Collective, my mission is to decode the change. And people are the problem when you think about adoption. And we want to make the change a part of our human nature. And so my goal in creating the Code Collective was to fill the middle gap. So you've worked for Big Four, and you know that the execution of a strategy doesn't happen when you work with a lot of the Big Four. They leave you with the strategy, the plan, but they don't actually help you to execute it. So you really need to find that. In my experience, that's something that I saw as a gap. I've had lots of conversations with CDOs, CIOs, CTOs about what is the challenge in adopting AI or being able to bring AI into their organization. And it's the people, it's the culture, it's shifting the mindsets from the way things have been to the way things are, to where we're going. And so my goal in building the Code Collective was to fill the middle gap, help people shift their mindset, and really drive change from the inside out, not just from the top down, but from the bottom up, so people actually believe in the change. Because I believe if people can have the right belief in the systems that we're building, the processes and the change, that we'll find that there's greater ROI, greater adoption, and we'll fill that middle gap.
No, absolutely. Because I think when you're talking about AI, when you're talking about technology, especially the age of AI, the only constant is change. And for us who live it, the pace of change is relentless. It's really impossible to keep up. And we're in it every single day. And what you actually see in organizations is, how do you keep up with the pace of change? Then how do you also, actually, figure out the resistance to change? And that slows everything down from an implementation adoption perspective. And then thinking also about the foresight, right? Of where you're trying to go. A lot of people, when you're putting them in a place of change, a lot of people can't really see directionally where they're going or to trust that. And that's what makes it so hard, is that, if you're going into AI, you have to actually embrace and accept that the only constant is change, and that you need to understand disruption is going to be part of your daily life, and you have to accept the change. And it's okay, because AI actually gets better when it learns from you. So AI itself is constantly changing to get better. And so what does that really mean for organizations in really thinking about that? And the smartest thing that I say to people when we're implementing AI or any sort of technological solution, it's not about the tech.
Right.
This is always about people first, and putting people first. And especially with AI, the biggest thing everyone's fearing right now is that, oh, my job is going to go away. AI is going to replace me. No, I want to be very clear that this is about putting people first. This is about putting you first. And that this technology is all about what's going to augment you as your human capabilities. So, but you've been in the other side of the equation here, when you're really dealing with the biggest problem, the 70% of where AI implementation and adoption fails, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about what that means for the workforce, and how you have developed the Code Collective, the code, to really help make sure that we're really successful in transforming the people part of the AI deployment.
So just to go a little bit about my background.
Sure.
So I've spent 12 years working inside global organizations, and I was able to have a unique opportunity to work in global innovation. And so that is across 94 countries, listening to employees, hearing their ideas, crowdsourcing those, and really understanding what drives the ideation, the execution process from manufacturing all the way to customer service. So I've seen the functional aspects of growth, innovation, what drives and motivates people, and how they think. And I spent a lot of time developing internal organic programs that technically should have sat within the HR realm, which are very people culture focused, but actually driven towards helping people see opportunity to improve the way they do work. So that continuous improvement mindset. So when you marry kind of this personal development, which is my emotional intelligence, my adaptability to change, with innovation, which is how do I do my job bigger, better, faster, I found an opportunity to marry those two together. And that birthed this idea of the code. We have code in every part of the world. It unlocks our doors. We have code for programming computers. But what if we could unlock that human code, which is I can now unlock my own capabilities, my own creativity, my own problem solving within the job and the role that I do. I can understand the impact that I have, how I can change how I do what I do to improve not only my life, but the lives of those around me. And then look, how can I adopt AI, right? Identify real valuable use cases that have an outcome that I'm looking for. And so through design thinking and this outcome driven approach, I was able to develop this proprietary framework to help not only just get people thinking, but embed the code that's necessary in order for me to now be empowered to own the outcomes that I'm looking for. So that whether it's general transformation in terms of maybe you have a cultural need to reimagine how our operation should be, whether it's team oriented, how do we do the job together, or whether it's that real organizational change, which means we're implementing a new process, new system, new AI technology, but now I can unlock that power of the people to drive the change, own the change and the outcome, and increase your viability. So that change enablement, the skills enablement, and that mindset enablement is really our focus.
Gosh, I wish I met you when I was sitting in the Big Four, because this was always my biggest problem when I was sitting in a Big Four, where I'm like running practices that are about implementing the latest and greatest technological solutions. And again, screwing the light bulb in or just putting in the technology is not the hardest part. That actually is the easiest part. Getting people to actually adopt to the technology and use the technology was the hardest part, and really thinking about the upskilling, the reskilling, and the process and organizational changes that the new technologies kind of come in. And what I struggled with in the big consultancies is that all of the practices are so big, but they're all very focused. So you've got, your technological practice of XYZ, you've got, your human capital sitting on the other side, and most of your human capital and mergers and acquisitions focused. And, when you're starting to think about change management, they're great at understanding organizational charts and looking at the people, but they actually don't understand the technology and what it actually means for the people to be trained into the technology. They don't speak that language. Right. So they also don't really understand the intricacies of the processes that actually need to be changed and how to really talk to the people from bottoms up, tops down to create that adoption and that real organizational change. And so when I saw what you developed from the Code Collective, and I know that also is born out of being a client of the Big Four, where, very guilty of handing you your beautiful PowerPoint presentation of 120 something 5 slides, but it becomes a roadmap that is not actually executable within the organization, because it's just, it's a lot of, it's not theory, it's based on thought, but it doesn't become like a how-to guide of how do you bring people along. And so when you wrote the Code Collective, and I was just thinking about Alonsera and, where we are going as a consultancy, and really thinking about not just the successful implementation of solutions, I really was thinking about it in terms of deployment and really solving for that 70%. And what you've built for the Code Collective just actually makes sense to marry in to the overall Alonsera offerings, to really think about all this stuff in lockstep. It's not change management or organizational transformation as an afterthought. It's actually embedded in every single step of the way as you're actually bringing in the technology and the innovation from that aspect of it. So I was so excited when I saw the Code Collective. I'm so excited about this partnership that we have together to really bring meaningful change to companies that are really seeking that, kind of Big Four enterprise, quality, but can't afford it. And now we are able to actually bring it at a price point that, serves the underserved middle market and as well as emerging markets. So
Right.
very, very excited about that. Let's talk a little bit more about, again, the transformation aspects of it. I mean, I've talked a lot about all of the different missteps that you would get from a big four. Let's talk a little bit about like granularly around, what you developed in the code or what's included in the code that gives you that, top down, bottoms up transformation.
Yeah, it really starts with understanding the culture of the corporation or the business that we work with. And working in a global organization, you really identify that regionally operations looks different, globally things look different, how the people are actually managed and how they're able to be led is different. So there's not a one size fits all approach to how change works. And so I've spent so much time on the road. I call you're a road warrior. I was a road warrior, but I spent time, boots on the ground. And what's unique about that is when you talk to people, you identify what motivates them. You understand how their business actually works. You look and you observe how they do what they do, like the work of just not getting the work done, the productivity, the measures, how those measures are evaluated, and what success looks different globally. And so working in this type of environment really helped me to understand and unlock the barriers. And when you think about barriers to execution, it usually starts with leadership. And so the first thing that we would do when we go in the country is we work with the leaders, because if we start with the people, right, you start most change with the people. We're going to introduce you this new technology. But realizing quickly that there were barriers and blockers to the success, and the success would not happen if we didn't start with leadership first. And the first thing they would say was, why aren't my managers going through this training? Do they know what they're doing? And we're going to learn it, but are they going to use it? And you would find this disparity between the way that they would execute towards success versus how the people actually viewed this new technology. And so what I found was that we were able to implement a process where we started with mindset. So none of our transformation projects just started with the skills. We always started with the people. And so we would spend 2 days really deconstructing leadership mindsets, how they communicate, what their process improvement steps look like, what their goals were they aligned with those goals. And so sometimes it took us 2 days to really get to the point where we could break down all of the internal barriers with leadership, how they were going to execute that with their team, what success looked like. We got everybody on the same page. And so any project, any technology that was adopted from that point on was all singing from the same song sheet. And when you don't execute strategy that way, which is what kind of the big four would do, they would leave us with this plan. We're like, okay, so how do we implement it? We had to actually get our hands dirty. So I had to develop processes with my team from the ground up. So that's understanding the team dynamic, understanding the leadership barriers, understanding their communication flow and plan, and then we would put these plans in place so that at every turn there's accountability, there's shared understanding, there's shared goals across the world, and then I could replicate the ownership, because the question would be, well, who owns the change after it's implemented? And so we would identify those change champions. There would be a set of criteria that we would look for. These are the types of people that we need in order to own this change once it's implemented, so that we could make sure we could replicate. Like, I'm one person, but I don't have one of me all over the world. So I had to learn how to identify those key people, train them, right, to execute the way we would, and then have the structure in place where we could follow up, follow through, and make sure that those measures were in place. And so now stepping outside of corporate, understanding how this works from manufacturing to legal to product marketing to sales, if I could replicate that all over the world, why can't I do that for a broader audience of people? And now with AI being the thing that most people are saying we're challenged because people are fearful of it, people are now resisting the change because we're implementing the AI tools, and well, I mean, I'll use it if I want to, right? How do we shift that mindset to, I know why I'm here, I know why this tool exists, I know how I'm going to use it. We've observed its usability, feasibility, like we do the studies, and now we make sure that we implement clear change plans with communication starting from the top. and it is just a solution for success. So I'm super excited because now this that I've lived for 12 years in this global organizations, now I can bring it to more companies that haven't had that cultural piece embedded into their change process.
No, absolutely. And I like that it starts with leadership. And I'm glad that you identified the different types of leadership, because when you're thinking about not just AI transformation, but digital transformation, let's even start there. We're in the age of AI transformation. Most transformations, when there's a technological component of it, fail because of the resistance of the people to adopt to it. And it comes down to leadership, and it comes down to who's sponsoring it, right? And so sometimes you will have, there's multiple different ways to think about it. Sometimes you'll have a transformation that's been dictated from the top,
right,
and you already get the natural resistance, like, why are we doing this, right? So you get the disgruntled employees who are already resistant to the change, to kind of, who don't want to be part of that journey. Or it can come from not exactly from the C-suite itself, but from some mid-level SVP that's running some sort of transformation that, you've actually narrowly looked at for one department, but that it's so narrow to look at that from a business perspective, because you can't create just one change within a department or one organization of a company that's trying to drive business growth,
right,
when you actually need to cut across, especially with AI. It's so important when you're thinking about all of this transformative technology and the implementation of it to really bring everyone in the organization along, because what this change is going to do, it's going to rapidly change your entire organization. It's about new ways of working, 100% new ways of working. So yes, your job is not going to look the same. And it's okay, because the whole value proposition of AI and the technology that we're in is to take away the $5 an hour jobs out of the $500 an hour minds.
right.
And so if I will never have to do some sort of manual data entering or, scrubbing a spreadsheet for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that, because
Right.
it allows me to do something else. And so I think bringing people through that change, that process, is super important. But here's the thing, organizations are not going to look the same again. And even if I take that from the world of customer engagement, it used to be that sales, service, marketing, commerce sat as separate silos. But what we demand as customers today is omni-channel engagement, regardless of what the channel is. We don't know as customers that we're engaging with sales, service, or marketing. We're just thinking we're engaging with a company. And so what that really translates to in companies is that these fiefdoms need to be broken down. These processes and organizations need to be broken down in order for them to actually create that meaningful experience that we as customers are demanding and expecting. So that is a lot of organizational change. And then you layer on top of that the technology component. Right. It's a lot. And so I think it doesn't make any sense to me to come up with any sort of implementation from a technology perspective, especially AI, and throw away the change management or wait for it afterwards, or not bring the change management component to it at the very beginning, because what you're also trying to replace with AI is business processes. You're trying to make business processes better. So if your business processes as they stand today are a dumpster fire, and you're going to ask me to implement AI, all you're asking me to do is to replicate that dumpster fire, and it'll be magnified even more. So all I'm doing is then creating technology and all these models with duct tape that's replicating a process that no longer works. And so I think the code, as you start to think about it, what is the culture of the organization? Getting at the heart of the culture of the organization, understanding the levels of leadership, to your point, the top, C-suite executives, all the way to your middle managers and your junior managers that are driving all this change, they all need to be empowered to think about what their role is in this. And there also, I think, needs to be a safe space and a culture of understanding that that we're all figuring it out together. Right. I think that's where I see a lot of the transformation fails. And so I think that's really great to get to the culture part and to really unpack that from a leadership perspective. It goes without saying, once you kind of get down into the culture piece of it and getting everyone on the same, board to kind of rally around a transformation, that's pretty exciting. But how do you think about then the new skill sets that come down to the people How do you think about the actual adoption from the technology? How does the code solve for that?
Well, listen, when you think about adopting anything new, replication, repeatable steps, right? Things that we do over and over again. People like to have some sense of control and sameness, right? So you don't just start with introducing it as a one-time event. And what I've found in success is giving people a community where they can understand the process, they can ask their questions, they can play with it, break it, find out what works and what doesn't, share that knowledge amongst each other, and empower each other to ask questions and have that community. So enabling training is great. Skill sets training, upskilling, and doing all of those things. But the bigger piece of the success is not in the one-time event. It's in the continual follow-up and follow-through. So we like to implement what we call a high-touch program so that leadership understands exactly what their people are actually receiving. They're actually getting training at the same time. They're able to communicate what works and what didn't. They're able to test, right? And then come back and say, hey, these things worked. Like when we did a global co-pilot training, we found that there were some things that weren't great, right? They found some things that they loved about it and things that they didn't. But the things that they didn't, we were able to go back to Microsoft and say, hey, listen, these things need to be fixed about the system, and Microsoft could implement those things over time. And so being a part of like the first companies to be able to implement Copilot and be able to operationalize some of these processes, we were able to see immediate results. But one of the great things that we did was implement small pilots. So instead of rolling it out to the entire company, right, it wouldn't work that way. So we actually found teams that had aligned leadership, that had some specific goals. We identified use cases that could easily be measured. So part of what we do is offer the ability to understand some time studies, what works and what will we expect out of this, so that one of the big things the executives would want to know is what's the ROI, how much time, how much money, those things. But sometimes frontline leadership don't understand that part of change. So we will help teach them how to empower their teams, do the right kinds of pre-studies, understanding their motivations to use it, what makes them not want to use it, and then fix those things. The other part of it is understanding when you identify a use case, all use cases don't have an immediate ROI. So over time, what actually can we measure? What are we looking for out of this? So it's giving everyone a roadmap of what success will look like, and then making sure that there's a partnership. So it's not just an event, but it's a partnership between the code and the leadership teams and the staff to make sure that it's implemented and embedded within the culture, and that we know what we're getting out of the end result. Is the ROI being achieved? And if not, why? And then we're able to go back to the drawing board and do those same studies again.
No, I think that's really important, and that completely aligns with the methodology of how we think about AI implementation at Alonsera, right? The first thing, us after you accept the change is define the why. Why are you doing this, right? What are you trying to solve for becomes really, really important, because you can't boil the ocean. And then, when you start with the business objectives first and not the technology, then to your point, you're able to break this down into smaller use cases, defining those objectives, then being able to dive deep. Wait, if we're solving for this use case, are we organizationally ready? Not just organizationally, do we also have the right data and technology in place to actually even solve for that use case? So it gives you a little bit of moments of pause to even think about what are the investments that we need in order for us to enable this use case, and then creating, to your point, that roadmap. And then yes, think big, start small, scale quickly, 100%. That's right. Start with a small POC, fail fast, scale quickly. And, but I think this is also the best way to bring people along so that they can embrace the art of the possible and keep that team spirit alive. And that's so important when you're trying to create change, when you're trying to bring in new innovative solutions into a company, because you cannot boil the ocean.
That's right.
So, but creating that excitement, I think, is extremely important as you start to think about, the transformation. You said this earlier, and, being part of the Big Four, I'm also kind of guilty of that in my career where, I've handed you beautiful, beautiful, beautiful PowerPoint, and then I walk away. Or, there's always a sense of like, at one point do you actually disappear and you walk away, and that we are actually ready as a company to take this on, right? Instead of spending that money in consultancy services. And in so many ways, that's also why I founded Alonsera. I wanted to be different. I really wanted to create that meaningful impact and change, and to really work with clients to really help them navigate through that transformation. I don't want to just throw a PowerPoint at you,
Right.
and leave you to the wind and say that, this is where our relationship stops until you sign the next change request and next SOW. But I really want to be able to fulfill the promise of what we brought out together, what we set out together, and get the real value of your investment, right? Instead of just throwing out that
Right.
PowerPoint to you. And so, and this is, I think, where, to be quite frank, where the Big Four was never set up to go away. We were never set up to go away. We were always set up to land and expand and stay. And so how are you thinking about, really truly empowering the organization? What are the skill sets that you're putting there so that they can be self-sufficient in terms of, driving the transformation once us consultants go away?
Yeah, and that's important to me because, leadership empowerment is the success or failure of any future project or process that they try to improve. And so I believe in establishing a change mindset within the leadership, because that's where we're going to be able to drive the most effective ongoing support. And so part of what my goal is in the code, we developed what we call the leadership code. And this gives them a set of skills that are beyond just process improvement. It becomes now ownership and accountability within the leaders. And so my focus is to really start with that middle management layer, which they see the front line, they understand the failures, they see what drives the business, and make them accountable to now improving how they do the work, improving how their teams feel valued. And it's more leadership development. So I don't see change separate than leadership development, because it's a continual process. And if I can empower them to identify problems early, to not sit on change that needs to happen because you get into the rut, there's too many meetings, they're not thinking about it, ideas bubble up, but they don't do anything with them, and their staff is frustrated, and the leadership, there's I told my manager about this problem and they didn't do anything. It creates this 360 culture where now we're listening for the right things, we're catching drift when it happens, we're understanding when we need to step in and push back to executive leadership when there's decisions that are coming around things that need to change or that they want to implement. And this culture now becomes a part of the organization that says we're owning at every single level. If I can get someone that sits in customer service to know what they do, how they do it, how it impacts the customer, they own that outcome. Manufacturing team, if they don't show up and they're on the line and they miss their targets and their goals, they don't understand the impact that has on customer delivery and customer satisfaction. Every single layer in the organization needs to understand their role, why they're doing what they're doing, the impact that they have, those numbers that they see that come out every single day, month, quarter, they know exactly their impact to that. So my goal is to embed that within the culture. Communication is big. One of the things that we hear all the time is that change comes from the top, but there was no understanding. It was a one-time communication. They sent it out through a newsletter. Oh, it's here. But that it's here didn't then go down to that middle layer to say, what does that mean for us? What's coming down the pike? What are your fears around it? Share with me how this is going to work in your everyday. Let's look at the process and see where does this fit. My goal is to embed this now in that middle management layer where there's lots of accountability, so that they're communicating properly up top and they're also communicating down to the frontline layer, and everyone feels a part of the process of change, so that it's not the one-time event, not the one-time AI technology enablement. It's a continual process of ownership in their everyday life. That is my goal. It's not just about a one-time transformation. It's making sure the organization changes the way they operate.
No, and I like this as well because, the mindset shift of this being about leadership. It's not just about leadership at the top, but really developing the next set of leaders from the bottom and really looking at your entire succession for the longevity of your company.
Yes.
And really developing that talent. And I think, what you always have with guilty of the big four, right? We'll come in, we'll do a one-time training, and then we're gone. Right. And then we expect that knowledge is then contained to the people in the room of what that change and what that transformation is. What you have built into the code, which is super exciting, is some of the training and development aspects of it that actually then is embedded and lives within the organization. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, and this is something that's exciting because there are training that happens within any organization, right? Usually owned by HR, but that sits outside of the operation because HR technically doesn't really live the business. They're not breathing the processes. They don't understand the drivers and the factors. And so what I saw the opportunity in hearing all of the missing key to success of these AI technology enhancements and these failures that they're experiencing was we need something that's going to attack the culture from the inside out. And that is what the code is. It is a set of operating procedures, it's processes, it's mindset, it's all three. So we're going to understand the people, the process, the technology behind change, and that becomes how we now see our company as ours. I don't want people to think like they're just employees, they're owners. And if you can get every single leader to feel that they own a piece of this company, now what kind of mindset would people be walking around with if they really have that level? Like, this is my company. I own a piece of this, and this is how I'm going to show up every single day. I would not say that that's not a company I wouldn't want to work for. That's somebody I want to show up for. And I've seen it work. So this is not just me saying, oh, I think this is going to be successful. I've seen this successfully embedded culture with change, with Glint scores improving, being the highest among, organizational change management processes that stayed with just changing the process. But actually, if I could change your Glint scores and I could actually show you that employee satisfaction goes up, that belonging improves, all of these other factors that we only think about that as just HR. No, this becomes the way we feel about what we do. So I want to change belief, and that's what we're prepared to do.
No, it's super exciting, and I've spent majority of my career in large scale transformations. I don't think you can just say digital transformation, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, modernization, whatever you want to call it. I've just really been in the forefront of a lot of that with all this technology. It has changed, and now the next apex of technology being AI. And I have to tell you that, and a lot of times when we came to the change management aspect of that, when it came to the people organization aspect of it, it was a lot of the things that my team and I needed to develop on the fly. Right. As I said, we couldn't really tap into our friends in human capital because they were just so focused on M&A and looking at the organizational pieces. I didn't have the right practitioners to actually understand how do you think about the tech, the process, and how do you create the change management, embed the change management to the training of the tech, to the training of what the new process is with the tech,
right.
and what that means to redefine leadership, and honestly redefine new roles and new titles.
Yeah, how are you going to do that?
And HR on human capital side from a consulting perspective is not thinking that way. They're thinking kind of what they see from a box perspective. Any moment that you tell them that we're going to go switch lines and things like that, it is a panic moment for them. But that is very, very, very real. And had I kind of rewound the clock, instead of having to reinvent the wheel, which is why I got so excited when you came up with the Mutas. This is the most exciting thing I've ever seen. It is so well articulated. It is just so poetic in the way that you've actually put your framework together, that, as I started to think about, honestly, Alonsera into business, in the back of my head was that change management piece that was actually living very heavy in my head, because I know how to do it. I can do it, but I also knew the effort that it takes to actually do it and come back with the methodology that when you walked into my dining room and showed me this, I was like, prayers answered. It allows me to look at all the different aspects of the business and say, this is exactly where this fits. This actually makes sense in the offering, and it seamlessly integrates with the entire framework of what we built at Alonsera. And it just makes sense to the way that I would have approached it. And I think part of it is because you and I have lived to way too many transformations that have failed, and also transformations that have been successful, and knowing as well the different entry points of how you would go about a transformation, right? Whether it is CEO driven, and they are rarely CEO driven.
Right.
Most of the time they are organizationally driven, whether it's a marketing transformation, an IT transformation, et cetera. And even the way that people are buying AI is still from a siloed organization perspective. Right. But when you actually think about where the savings are going to be, where, where your CFO is looking at his balance sheet, well, you said it's going to save me this, but your marketing person is not willing to let go of their FTEs or their portion of the budget to shrink that. It's not really the way that you look at it from the siloed perspective. You have to look at it across the board.
Right.
Because the whole opportunity of what true digital transformation, AI transformation, whatever you want to call it, is that it's not transforming one part of the organization. It's transforming the total organization. Right. So that you're actually having to rethink about people, processes, and the tech, and your cost savings, and all of that kind of stuff holistically.
Yes, absolutely.
So anything else to add about the code that I didn't catch? I mean, those are the big aspects to me as I think about, our clients and what everyone is thinking about with AI and the fears around AI. And I've been really talking a lot about how to implement AI successfully. And to me, it really comes down to the aspect of the people, which is why the code is so exciting. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add that I didn't cover.
Yeah, I think if you really think about what does your organization need, what's missing today. And when you work with consultants, obviously they come in with a lot of ideas, but I think the beauty of what we're building is the ability for you to have the kind of organization that makes people want to show up. And so whether transformation, that we are not just a plug and play. It's tailored to the needs of your organization. So everything that we do, we're bringing that unique aspect to your culture, your lived and breathed vision and mission, with empowered by the code. I would say that. So code powered, AI enabled, and that workforce that's going to show up for you. But really, what is missing in your organization today? And if you could flip the switch and say, this is who we need to become, and can AI help you get there? Do you need a full transformation from the inside out? That means from the top down, bottom up, middle out, because that's what really makes a strong organization. And reach out to us. Listen, we're in this together, right? And I think that we're going to make, a lot of impact on what's missing right now and the fears around it. We're prepared to distill those fears, to empower the people to think better, to work with AI and improve the way they do their work. And so, yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity that's before us. It's endless.
I'm so excited about what we're building together and what we're doing with the code, and so excited about just really the ways that you and I are approaching transformation and what this really means for companies. You and I both came from corporate America, and we've stepped out. I personally decided to go down this trajectory of Alonsera and starting my own company instead of wanting to jump back in, although, there have been many tempting offers to jump back in. But I think the thing that resonates with me the most is that I live my life with passion and purpose. And I love to show up to my companies that I work for with passion and purpose. Yeah. And I think that was like a value that I haven't seen or was able to, show itself to me in the corporate world is, what part of this job is going to be aligned to my passion and purpose and my growth. And I think so much change is happening in the job market today in big corporations. We're seeing a lot of disruption and a lot of people as well not wanting to jump back into any sort of corporation because they're looking for exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Passion and purpose and growth. And this is what's exciting to me, because this is not just about how do we think about AI, successful AI development, implementation, and deployment, but this is actually, again, truly bringing the person back into the forefront of all of this change, of all of this transformation to the culture of any sort of organization.
Human-centered approach.
Human-centered approach, but it is about thinking about fueling people's passion and purpose and getting them excited about growth, and really thinking about leadership building and bringing that back, and bringing back true mentorship and sponsorship within the organization that's really thinking about, not just the organization from today, but sustainable growth for the future.
Yeah, making better people for the future of the world, so that they're moving with the technology, but empowering each other. And that's purpose driven. And that's what makes me want to do this every single day. I've got to do it for the last 12 years, touch people. It's a high, love is a part of it. I don't feel why we can't go to work and love what we do, love the people we work with. If I can get up every day and instill joy, purpose, and actually get people to be excited about learning something new, I think we've done our job. And that helps people not only in their work life, but also in their personal life.
Absolutely.
So I want to see full people transformation, not just business, but life transformation.
Oh my gosh, these are exactly the same words of why we're doing what we're doing, and why you and I have both taken this great leap of faith together.
Big leap.
Big leap of faith together, over a cliff, right?
Mm-hmm. No plan B.
No plan B. And and really truly what I'm excited of, what we're able to bring to the market, and the value that we're able to bring into organizations that are really ready for this new wave. So thank you so much for being a great partner of Alonsera. Thank you for building this new world together. I'm just truly excited. And
thank you for having me. Look, there's more to come. There's going to be many more conversations, many more learnings, and excited to share more.
Thank you so much for tuning in. To learn more about Alonsera and the Code Collective, please visit alonsera.com and thecodecollective.ai.